Wow, that's like going down into something down there. Jeez.
This is the start of all horror movies.
This is the start of all horror movies.
We're in the hills down here. Trevor didn't know it was so hilly.
I did not know this. So this is what you could call part 2 of Hunter's mapping video. We're going down to meet up with the owner of the property, kind of walk it with them and see how we would still attack the property and kind of just give in-person consulting. So we're headed down to southern Missouri, right?
Almost, yeah.
Almost southern Missouri. And I didn't realize that there's hills in here. And we're like an hour out and there's some pretty good hills. So kind of some cool country around here. And we're finally opening up out of the horror scene and hopefully gonna find some buck deers.
What are you doing?
Just making beautiful music. If Ted can make bucket hats cool, I'm gonna make harmonicas cool.
Heading into the hillbilly Ozarks.
Well, we just made it up here to the property. Everybody's a little camera shy, but taking a look at everything, and so far it's looking pretty good. I'm excited to take a look at it and see how we can try to help set up the farm. Got another public landowner here, so that's always good to see.
Check out that
All
shirt.
for the ride.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
I think driving in here, everything's looked pretty much exactly how I thought it would from the maps. As far as the habitat goes, we have like a lot of cedars, hickory, oak, timber, stuff like that. A lot of stuff that we're used to. And coming in so far, this field is actually a little bit flatter than we thought it was, and it sets up really well to be a good destination food source, exactly like what we thought. If you guys haven't seen the mapping part of this video, you might want to go take a look at that, kind of see our plan going into this. But basically we want to turn this whole big overgrown field here into a big food source, and it sounds like they have the equipment to do it, and now all they need is time, I guess. And there's a lot of junk up here that needs to be removed, and once they get that removed and they can get this into a good destination food source, it'll make the rest of the property flow a lot better. We can get trails going around it so they're not spooking deer, and it'll just make it a lot more huntable and a lot more predictable, all of the movement going around this property. So excited to see what it has entail.
I've always seen a lot of deer over in that corner.
It's like they might be using that.
They cross tracks in there a lot too. Yeah.
Is this oats or what's planted in here?
Just wheat mostly.
Wheat.
And
Okay.
it had a lot of chicory in it. I don't see any of that now.
Yeah, we like
And
chicory.
it had alfalfa in it too, but I don't see any of that. Because
Yeah.
I don't know what alfalfa is. I ain't killed nothing real big. 153 and an eighth. I think I killed it right in the edge of this line, walking the edge of this food plot.
That's a pretty big deer. Yeah. Is that an old homemade stand up there?
Yeah, that thing's been there for 20, 30 years.
That thing's sweet. That's how you know it's a good spot. So I found first spot that really stands out to me that should be a tree stand location, and it's this really nice, it's probably a 2-acre bedding area, and it's just this little ditch that comes down. There's a nice select cut all throughout it, and there's a lot of tops on the ground, and I guess it used to be open hardwoods, and now that the loggers have come through, it's starting to increase stem count a lot, starting to get a lot thicker. There's a lot of daytime browse, a lot of briars, a lot of beds in there, a lot of poop, a lot of tracks, some rubs, so we know the bucks are bedding in there too. And there's a lot of trails that come up on this high side here around this transition where it gets thick down in there, and then it comes up here and there's another transition of thick cedars, and it's going to pinch them down along this top side of this bedding area. And if we can get that top field up in a good food source, this is definitely the route that they're going to take to come around this bedding area and come out of here. So I think it's a really good spot. A lot of trails converge, and he's got a nice access trail for getting out of here without spooking deer. None of the deer are going to be able to see them when they're in their beds, and then coming out in the dark, we just have to be careful. And so there's a nice black oak up here that's kind of It's got a lot of leaves around it rather than just a bare tree. Like a lot of these trees are really bare because of the slut cut. And I think that'd be a really good one for a stand.
Yeah.
Did you find any beds up where this point was?
No, not yet.
If you already walked, I'm just going to delete that so I don't get it mixed up. Because
I think they're up higher than I thought they were gonna be, though.
it might be because he said the people have been. Are you filming?
I'm recording, but it's not doing it.
They might be up higher because I just picked my nose on camera. They might be up higher because he said people sometimes walk those tracks and poach deer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that's why we might be finding some of this. But anyway, I really like that stand because that's right in the middle of this buck bed too, and he's probably gonna go out, maybe get a drink at this pond right here, and then walk that trail, and he can shoot that trail from that stand.
Yeah.
And he's also got pretty good dam access. And
He's not. And
I mean, that's
he's not
a
see
good
him.
rub. I mean,
Yeah. He's not gonna see him getting in there if they're.
No, he's tucked around. I'm actually surprised that the buck is so far in there, but it's definitely a bed.
Yeah.
That's the only thing
It's
it could
back
be.
up in there, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's what that, because there's no like real trail, and that's what that rub's marking is just this
Yeah.
bed. It's definitely a buck bed. There's tracks, and you can see it right there. I mean, there's.
Oh yeah. They're actually. That's
That
not the
way.
same bed that I found.
Oh,
So there's
really?
a bed here. Yeah, this is actually a really good find. There's a bed here. This is the bed Hunter found. Right here in this thick stuff, right? And then you see that tree right there? That cedar that
Yeah.
comes up and there's those
Those are-
overlaying.
Yeah.
That's where I originally found what looked to be a bed. I just couldn't confirm it, and that's before I saw that rub. So there's like multiple beds here for different winds and situations, and they are just tucking themselves up in here.
Yeah, I really like this, and I think maybe a mock scrape on that lane in between that, right by that stand, and that's gonna be a killer spot. Because
Yeah.
you're right in between two. The one bedding area is a lot bigger than this, or I guess this is all a big bedding area, but this is just the specific bed, and it's right in the middle of both of them.
Some of these pretty steep trees with deer crossing cross everywhere.
Yeah, I think I can see more rubs up there. I think it might pinch that trail down by this creek. I think it'd be a good spot to put it there. Go right up there.
Yeah, that's what we see most of our time. That's for sure.
And this is just an awesome transition where it gets
Kinda
real
makes
thick again.
sense, though, you know.
Oh yeah.
That deer I shot was angling into this shit, and that's the way he was coming.
I think a stand along this. How did it look coming up through here?
There's trails that are running from that way, but there's really not much kind of towards the very north part of the property.
I think it's gonna get better.
Yep, it's thicker down here.
I
didn't
think
get
it's good for access. They could come up in this transition and hunt right here because I think they better. It's so open up behind us here. I think they're bedding down on this stuff.
yeah. Down in this bottom here, there's oaks everywhere.
Yeah. Be good early season.
I think there's more room that way, isn't there?
Yeah, I think we should keep pushing
Pressing
down
that way. Yeah, I just didn't know where you went.
before we go over. But this is the best. This is the first good sign I've seen since dropping
Back
off
there.
the top.
Yeah.
Just be a real good kill plot area, and especially during the rut. These bucks can cruise. There's a water source that runs right back behind it, and these bucks can cruise and come out in this field, bedding all around it. This property has no shortage of cover, especially
yeah.
in this part of it. So if they can get this whole field converted into good clover or something,
Or even this bottom side.
yeah, even
Just
just
a
this,
shooting amount. I think they're going to see a lot of
Mhm.
really good.
yeah, funnel them all. They already have a pretty good tucked-in blind, so really good access. I like this field. They have the right idea. They just haven't owned it very long.
Yeah.
Alright everybody, so as you can tell we're back. I wanted to wrap up the video here by using maps, kind of like where we started. Overall it was a really good day walking the property, getting a feel for a new area. We've never hunted that far south, and we've never really stepped foot on hunting properties that far south, so we really appreciate Danny and his father allowing us the opportunity to come down and take a look at his property. With everything, with all of our clients, they can get a hold of us at any time and let us know if things either aren't working or if things are working, if they have any questions. We've been talking back and forth about different drills and seeders that they might pick up. So I wanted to just kind of finish it off with looking at the maps here quick and showing everybody kind of what we decided and changed on from plan 1 to plan 2 after walking the property. And I'm really thinking there's going to be a lot of really good deer movement on this property after walking it. Super thick, there's a bunch of cover, and the only thing that we thought was missing on this property was good food. So let's dive into the maps here and show you all kind of what we saw and what we plan. Okay, so taking a look at the property here, I think they had a pretty good foundation on this property that was going to allow them to continue to have the more successes that they had in the past. They originally owned the property that runs like this, and they just recently picked up this 40 acres here, and that allows them a lot of really good access points to get in and out of their property smart and effective. There's 2 points that I wanted to make while talking about this property as well as a bunch of other properties as an example to make sure that you have success. The 2 things that a property has to have, and they have to be together. You can't have one and not the other. 1 is food and 2 is access. And I'd almost say access first and then food, because food can come in multiple different forms and factors of having natural browse, which is up here on this part of the property. There's a lot of really good select cut in here, a lot of really good thickets, and like Hunter talked about, the stem count was growing. There's a bunch of different thick areas in here, treetops laying around. It's just really thick, and it's creating really good natural browse areas in here. And there's beds around here, doe family groups, some buck bedding, and they have some lanes in here that are already running, which makes it nice. And there's a lot of really good sign up in these cedars that we weren't really expecting as much. Yes, there's a lot of deer sign along the edges of them, which we were expecting to see, but there was some crossing over and good rubs in these big, thick, taller cedars, which we've never really hunted before. So not to get too off tangent, but with the food aspect, like I talked about, it could be natural browse, and the other form and factor can be either in food plots or big ag food sources. And if you look around this area here, you can tell that there's really not much food around, no real ag sources around in this area. This would have been the closest thing that I originally thought, but as you zoom in here, as you can tell, it's just an overgrown field. And as you can see there on the onX maps, you can see trails running through here, coming out and crossing. So that was just another side note, what you can do on onX. Anyway, but there's really no food in the area, so the deer have to have food, and there's a lot of really good acorns in here. Like I said, there's other natural browse in this area, but we wanted to expand our food sources, because if you don't have enough food, you can't support a deer herd, and the deer are going to move miles away, and you know, they potentially may not come back, because if they don't have the food, they can't survive. So with this property, we wanted to make sure we put a big food source in that deer could go in and feel comfortable feeding in, and it was big enough to support a large herd of deer. As you can tell right here, this is a food plot that they had originally, and there's a pond up in here now. But this field right here is just not big enough. It's maybe 1/4 of an acre. This right here is 4/10 of an acre. So about a 1/2 an acre, so that's not even. It just wasn't big enough for the deer to, enough deer to come in there and feed. Yeah, they were getting does on it, and they were sometimes getting small bucks, and that was because there just wasn't enough food. The bucks knew that the does were in this area. They were feeding on it all year long. They were taking all the nutrients out of it, and it just really wasn't anything big enough to allow the plants to do well enough to support a large deer herd. So we wanted to expand this food plot to make it bigger. That way more deer could get on this, so it'd be a ½ acre here, another ½ acre on this side to allow different doe family groups to feed over here, potentially bucks to come in, and then they would eventually, even up in here, this is another food source, and there's another one up in this area of the property. This would allow them to feed right before dark, and then work their way up into the big main soybean food plot here that we're going to have them put in. It's going to be like roughly 7 acres. They've already started the process, which is really good. And a lot of people will recommend, a lot of like consultings that I've seen, they recommend putting a lot of different food sources in, like big food sources. So like bulldozing this whole point here on the ridge, and potentially bulldozing all this down and making another big, larger food source. Which, like our new property now kind of lays up that way just because it's ag. There's large food sources everywhere. But the problem that we have with demolishing existing cover is, one, it costs money, and two, the soil is not going to be good for years after you do that. You're going to have to take a lot of money and time to put in that and replenish the soil enough to make it really worthwhile to grow crops. And then 3, it just creates a doe property. Yeah, it could be good once the rut rolls around, but in this area, it's Missouri, they have rifle season during the rut, so if there's better chances that the deer get shot on the neighbor's property than their own property. So we wanted to try to make it so this property held everything. It held the doe family groups down here, and it would hold them around those areas as well. There's a doe family group that were bedding in here too, but the doe family groups are bedding in these areas, and that leaves enough room for the bucks to start bedding on their property. And we're expecting them, I mean, there was buck bedding up in here, and we're expecting there to be more buck bedding just because of the fact that there's going to be a big main destination food source here. They're going to want to be in close proximity to it, and it's just going to really lay out perfect. If they have just a bunch of different big food sources, they're just going to hold does. If you can see my circles there enough to kind of get an understanding of why all the doe living areas would overlap super hard, it just wouldn't leave any room for bucks. So I think that covers it for the food area. The food really didn't change much for our consulting after the in-person. We still wanted to put this big main food source. We moved. Originally we had a food source here, but they already had another pretty small food plot that kind of ran like this. We just wanted to expand that and make that a little bigger. And deer, this is going to be a super great pinch point and funnel for deer to come up into here, and they're going to feed in here right before the nightfall comes, and then they're going to go up in here and feed at night. That's going to be the major pattern, and this is going to create a lot of really good patternable movement. So now that we covered kind of the food aspect, I wanted to cover the access aspect. Like I said, if you don't have one or the other, you're not going to be good, and you have to have both at the same time. I just want to keep stressing that. So access, this is like 12 months out of the year. Yes, it's okay to go in here, plant food plots, check trail cameras, spray herbicides on it, and whatnot. And you don't really have to manage your food sources for weeds as much as like a crop farmer would have to. Because there's a lot of good nutritional value in some of those weeds, like ragweed. Deer will eat on ragweed, and it just really doesn't hurt the deer herd. So if you have some weeds in there, don't worry about it. But we do recommend planting like a Roundup Ready bean, a soybean. That way, if you do have a problem where it's starting to overtake your field too soon, you can get in there, you can spray those weeds, kill the weeds off, and you can still save your soybean crop. So I wanted to point that out too. So going back to the access points, a big thing that we want to stress with every property, not just this property, is going in and out of your property smart and effectively. This access point here along the side isn't really as important as this north border. and this south border on this side, and then these two different access points here. And you can and they could have two different ones running on each side. It's just kind of being smart when you're going in. Go in on the right wind. If it's a south wind, do not come in from the south. If it's a south wind, try to come in from the north, and hunt in these different areas here, trying to catch deer coming back to bed. This is going to be the main source here. So try not to get too much off on a tangent, save everybody's time. So to go on more with access, it's really important to make sure that you're just being smart with getting in and out of your property and creating a sanctuary. They talked a little bit about how like they have an uncle or whatnot, and they kind of were walking the property, and you know, sometimes they drive their four-wheelers in here, and that's fine, I want people to make sure that they're still utilizing having fun on their property. But if they have goals of killing big mature deer, they have to create sanctuaries on their property. Yeah, you can still go in and, you know, plant your food plots and get what you need to do in here. And obviously they're living in this area, so there's going to be a little bit of impact up in here. But if they're smart and effective about it, and they're not in there at night in the evening, or they're not going in there in the middle of the night spooking deer off, they're not going to have as much problem with it. So accessing is going to be huge with every property. From January 1st to December 31st, it's super important to make sure that you're being smart going in and off of your property, because if you're not, then you're just bumping deer off, and you're going to have potential for deer to get shot, get hit by a car, or just not come back because they don't feel safe. So you want to make sure your property is the sanctuary. There's a lot of pieces on this parcel that doesn't get touched, which helps that. But like Hunter touched on, and a big main thing is when it's cold out, or when deer are really reliant on food sources, to just, even in general, just do not bump deer off of food sources if you can help it. Go in super early. If you've got to walk, let's say that you're going in to hunt this stand here, you go in on a north wind. You be really smart, really cautious. Go in extremely early. You can still use a flashlight, and deer won't really know what's going on. Go in slow, come in here on this side, and you could put another trail in this area here to kind of avoid coming into this food source here. But I think a majority of your deer is going to be up in here, so you can come right along here and get up into this stand, or even better, on a north wind, this is what we created this access for here. You come in along this area, and then you could have a stand here, and then we could have another opposite stand up in this area, or you could hunt back in here. So just kind of being smart and effective with everything, getting in and out of your property. So yeah, I mean, I think I covered that how I wanted to. Obviously, with the in-person, we were able to identify different stand locations, how we would hunt them, and when we would hunt them. This stand here is going to be pretty hard to hunt. Some of these stands in the center portion of the property are going to be a little bit harder to hunt. Obviously, you're not going to want to go in and just walk in this way in the morning, get up into here, and go sit up in that stand. You're going to have to kind of wait for the perfect conditions. So you're going to have to wait for the right wind. So for this stand, I would wait for your north wind, preferably a northwest wind here, because there really wasn't as much sign in this area. So preferably we'd want to see a northwest wind. And you come in along the bottom side of this field. You could create another walking area along the bottom of here. Get in along this trail system and go up in there super early, right before dark, or right before daylight. Get into here, set up, and you're gonna see a lot of deer funnel out of here early in the morning. That one buck may come back in bed here, but there's a really good chance that you're going to catch deer going back over here to bed on this neighboring property as well. So that's one example here. So you just kind of have to pick them all apart. This is not a stand that you're gonna want to hunt a lot. You got to kind of be strategic with that, and we'll work with them a little bit more on what they're seeing and what stands to hunt on which winds here. So yeah, I kind of want to just point that out. So overall, it's a really awesome property. I hope I covered everything I wanted to cover here. A couple other options that I wanted to point out to people for food sources that they can contribute is fruit trees. They could put different apple trees, pear trees, crap, I just forgot the name of it. I'll put a dot up here, the real name. I lost it. But put some trees up in this area, put them in the corners, whatnot. And that's a lot of really good. They could put one down here in this pinch point. They could put apple trees in a bunch of different locations on this property, and it wouldn't hurt anything. When they grow up and they get big and they start producing, it's a really good investment to do early on in a property like this, if they have time, because it takes a couple of years for it to establish and actually do anything. It probably takes around like 5 to 7 years to actually have a really good crop of apples or different fruit trees like that. But once they are established, it's really killer to have, because during the rut, deer are in... A lot of times during the year, like especially now when deer are worn out from winter, they're looking for those carbohydrates to kind of just fatten up. So they're gonna be coming in and looking for that, and that's gonna be a big hot spot. And if you have multiple different apple tree areas, you can have multiple different deer herds living around it. So I think that's gonna wrap it up. My camera is about to die because I've taken way too many takes doing this. So if you guys are interested in having us do mapping consulting, public or private land, go check it out. We have really affordable rates not only for that, but as well as our in-person consulting. It's like over half the cost of what like other people charge, and you're gonna get service. You're gonna get a good service. We're not just gonna be a guy who just shows up to the property, talks to you, and leaves. You can talk to us, call us, whatever, and we're going to be there to help you. Our main goal is just to help everybody. So if you guys want to learn more about that, our rates are, like I said, extremely affordable. So thanks for watching. We hope you guys learned something from this video. And if you have any other questions or comments about anything, either leave them in the description box below or send us an email at broncodoorinfo@gmail.com. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.